Now, coming to the approaches of fieldwork, there are actually two ways of looking at fieldwork. And this is not unexpected, given the fact that fieldwork owes its origins to expeditions and explorations and travels. So there are two approaches to doing fieldwork. One is the exploratory and the other is the experimental. Now, exploratory fieldwork is expeditionary in nature, which means that it is often done in the spirit of an expedition. You observe and discover spatial relationships and intangible interconnections between phenomena, human and human, human and environment, by studying social norms, cultural expressions. But this is done with the aspect of discovering something new that we are not aware of before. So this approach in a way is attributed more to travelers in the past. And also, even if you were to look at your own context of travels, if you have traveled for the first time to a tourist destination, you will be very excited about going there. In trying to figure out and also experience for yourself the newness of that place. But when you go there the second time or the third time or any number of times, that newness will give way to something else. And if it happens to be in the context of fieldwork, such an approach will invariably lead to what is known as experimental. Or rather, even at the outset, there could be a deliberate way of doing fieldwork where you gather data against specific questions. And those data help in testing. Say, for example, if one were to measure the impact of increased temperatures on glaciers, right at the outset, while visiting the glacier, there would be a certain set of questions that you have, certain set of measurements that you have to make and determine if any increase in temperature over a period of time has led to any change in the nature and behavior of that glacier. So in the experimental approach to fieldwork, this is more deliberate. It is a repetition, and there is an emphasis on sustained and integrated research. It has a very narrow focus. So in a way, you return to the same place in order to examine the same or related scientific problems, which could also at some point in time involve other researchers who may bring with them different understandings of the issue which is under consideration. And therefore, both these approaches are very important to fieldwork, but they are not the exact opposites of each other. It is possible that there would be a transition from exploration to experimental, or from experimental to exploratory. So there is a possibility that the experimental fieldwork may lead to identification of elements that need further exploratory investigation, whereas the exploratory fieldwork may advance to a deliberative investigation. Let us now understand what could be or what are the gaps in fieldwork. Any research methodology is not perfect by itself. And therefore, one needs to employ several methodologies in order to fill the gap of one by the advantages of another. So different methodologies would essentially complement each other in a robust academic or a research study. Now, looking at the gaps in fieldwork, one of the most cited criticism of fieldwork is the question of objectivity of both the researcher and the research output. Since the researcher happens to be investigating a field by being embedded in the field, there is often a question on the researcher's objectivity, whether the conduct of the research happened without the researcher's bias, or did the researcher's own preconceived notions became a part and parcel of the research inquiry. And if that be the case, then the research outputs are likely to be also affected. I will not use the word compromise, but affected. Let us delve a little deeper in this. The theoretical understanding of a phenomenon and its practical aspects are often at variance. We often talk about the difference between theory and practice. What happens in academics and what happens in industry. So, data which are generated and collected from fieldwork may appear to project the researcher's view, and therefore the explanations may be treated as biased. Now, this is intricately linked with the second gap, which is often talked about in fieldwork, is the question of limited generalization. So it emerges from an understanding that knowledge generated through fieldwork is not amenable to generalizations, since the nature of investigation follows the path of reporting uniqueness rather than finding evidence of generalizable truths. So, I had previously mentioned to all of you that each one of you is currently located in your own city or a town or a village. And when you're investigating your own city, you will find a lot of unique characteristics or characteristics or features which are unique to your settlement and not found anywhere else. If that be the case, then a study on the basis of just one city would not lead to generalizations. So that is where the issue with fieldwork is, that there is limited generalization. However, one needs to look at it from another perspective. Knowledge and understanding obtained through fieldwork can provide larger truths or generalizable explanations by working in another location or a site which is similar to the previous site. So this would also permit some sort of a comparative view. Now, coming back to the example of studying your own cities, perhaps some of you may be located in a hill station, say Shimla. So you may be interested in studying the urban development of Shimla. Of course, it is an important thing to study, given that Himachal Pradesh has one of the lowest levels of urbanization in the country. But it would be, the results that would come out of the study would be unique or applicable or reflect only on the case of Shimla. And therefore, such generalizations may not be formulated from just one case, but this gap can be filled in case you pick up another study site which is similar to the previous one. So which means the second study site also needs to be a hill station or a hill town of a similar population size like Shimla, and it could be located in another state, a hilly state of India, could be in Uttarakhand, could be in Jammu and Kashmir, could be in Sikkim, could be in any of the northeastern states. But the underlying requirement is that such a location or the second location or a site must have some similarity with the previous site. So now you would be able to arrive at some level of generalizations, but also be able to do a comparative study. So perhaps you may like to look at Shimla and Nainital, or Shimla and Darjeeling, or Gangtok. So in that way, one is able to overcome the limitations of fieldwork and fieldwork based study. The third criticism for fieldwork is the loss of truth. When I say the loss of truth, it means what is lost between observing, noting down the observation, and reporting about your observation. So there could be this loss of truth in translation between observation, noting, and reporting. And one must also understand that all these procedures are again iterative, and therefore there's every possibility of something being lost in translation, something being lost between the time that you're observing, the time that you are noting, and what you are noting, and the end product, which is the report, what is being reported. So these are the three main gaps or gaps in doing fieldwork. But I have already explained that some of these gaps can be easily overcome.